I'd like to start having more longer conversations on the channel about the low carbon transition. And this week I had a chance to sit down with my friend Anne to talk about some of the work that she's been doing in her spare time that's trying to help facilitate and accelerate heat pump adoption. I met Anne a couple of years ago at an event called Moving Beyond, which is a not-for-profit festival that brings people together across industry and community to think through how we might move beyond the status quo and move to a better future. I found the Moving Beyond events that I've been involved with both interesting and energizing. They really are an exciting group of people who want to shape a better future. And Anne and a few other people from that Moving Beyond family have published an open letter that's aimed to set out how we might deliver heat pumps at scale. So I'll link to the Moving Beyond website below, as well as the open letter that the team have worked on in the description of this video. I guess that's all for me for now, for an introduction. I'll check back in at the end to debrief what we talked about. But for now, over to a conversation with Anne about what they have been working on. Well, hello, Anne, and welcome to the YouTube channel, to Low Carbon Lifestyle. It's great to have you with us this evening. It is cold and dark in mid-November, so it's a good time to talk about heat pumps, I think. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Thanks, Tom. Thanks for having me. And yeah, we couldn't have picked a better day. The temperature literally just plummeted through the floor in the UK,
Absolutely,
didn't
yeah,
it?
absolutely. Well, I'm sat in a house with a heat pump, and I'm warm, but it is cold outside. So yeah, but for people on this channel that follow along with me, just give us a little bit of an introduction. Who are you? Why are you interested in this low carbon technology kind of world?
Definitely. So I'm Ann Siml. Despite my very American accent, I've lived in the UK for nearly a decade. I became British last week, actually.
Oh, welcome!
Um,
Congratulations! You get the
thank
secret handshake.
I do. Yeah, I'm in the club. And you know, what brings me to the low carbon tech world is actually back in university, I studied earth and atmospheric science. And so I went from thinking my career was going to be studying like rocks and earthquakes and things. And then I realized that there's actually sort of a bigger problem we've got in our hands, which is climate change. And so that took me first to Houston, where I spent a few years working in strategy consulting, now to the UK, where I was in strategy consulting, advising energy firms for some time, and recently I've joined Octopus in the EV strategy team. Um, but that's not what brings me actually to talking about heat pumps with you today, Tom.
Yeah.
I'm part of a community called Moving Beyond, and hopefully in the show notes or something you'll plug them. You're part of the community too, aren't you?
Absolutely, yeah. So yeah, we met at Moving Beyond in Teesside a couple of years ago, which is this funny group of people, really interesting group of people, really exciting group of people, and maybe we'll talk a little bit more about that later on. But
Perfect.
yeah, with some people at Moving Beyond, you've been working on some stuff around heat pumps and heat pump policy. So talk us through a little bit of what's that process been, and what have you come up with in terms of how we approach heat pumps, etc.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's been a team of us, and especially, I'd be remiss not to shout out a couple of key figures, Colin McGill and Jane Davidson in particular, who've been really instrumental to this work. So I'm representing sort of a wider crew that circled around at this kind of conference event a few years ago and said, gosh, if we work our way through the drivers of climate change, you know, energy and generation is obviously a big challenge, and one that we are sort of aware of what the technologies are to resolve that, right? In the main, solar, wind, maybe a bit of nuclear. That's for another discussion. Second big challenge is electric vehicles, which is now my professional world, and decarbonizing transport. And as I already kind of said, just from the words electric vehicles, like that technology is also largely arrived at. But what we weren't, as a little group, quite a climate and sort of energy literate group, really aware of at the time was like, where is the science coming out on heat pumps versus hydrogen, or electrification versus hydrogen,
Okay.
and why? And so we got into this really rigorous kind of debate in the room, but then over the course of a couple of years of working with people right the way across the value chain of heating, in industry, so with big energy kind of household names, in government, in the manufacturers of heating kit, in the high street banks, and basically right the way through everybody you can imagine that touches heating in the UK. And it came out pretty unambiguous that heat pumps and electrification are the solution for residential heating in the
Yeah.
UK. There's been a lot of research, and namely Energy Systems Catapult have done a phenomenal piece of work around their suitability for the
Yeah.
vast majority of homes here. And so we worked together to articulate that it's not just a climate and environmental reason. In fact, it's not even mainly a climate and environmental reason that we should be addressing heating in the UK and making it more efficient. It's actually one around bringing down our bills, securing our energy as a country, and creating jobs, and all the while allowing our households to pick what technology suits them and make the rational decision, which for the vast majority of homes is electrification.
Yeah. So I guess, yeah, what you just talked through there to parrot a little bit is, yeah, we're trying to work out how do we solve this heat problem, seeing that there's probably two main horses in this show, which is electrification and heat pumps or hydrogen. The conclusion that this group of people came to was electrification is key, and that will help us reduce emissions, but also it will help reduce costs, I guess, improve comfort, give jobs, give energy security. And I really like that, yeah, we can take on a climate target, a climate focus, and we can deliver a load of co-benefits alongside that. So
Yes.
yeah, I'm really thrilled that you guys have come to that as a conclusion. Um, and so you've published a bit of an open letter to try and support that and to try and, yeah, move beyond. Oh, I just got moving beyond in there by accident. Um,
So
of,
easy to do.
yeah, but yeah, try and move beyond gas boilers, I guess. Like what? So what's tell us more about the open letter. What's it trying to achieve, and what's the detail of what you've got in there? Um, yeah, tell us more.
So what we're trying to achieve is to bring this out of the political kind of rigmarole. And frankly, it's no secret that what got me into this conversation is climate and environment,
Yeah,
but it's also become extremely apparent that the main family and voter in the UK doesn't see that as the top sort of motivational point anymore for a lot of things.
yeah,
And so we tried to reach the Treasury and DESNES, the Department for Energy Security and Net Zero, with this open letter that articulates not an environmental or kind of climate rationale for electrified heating. Because whilst I said that's there, obviously that's relevant to the discussion, it's actually not even the main reason to do.
yeah,
I would argue the main reason to get a heat pump or for people to have heat pumps. Like this was the biggest surprise in my research, is just realizing that thermodynamically, or sort of in the physics of a heat pump, inherently the efficiency means that that's a technology that should win just on merit. Like
yeah,
environment aside, everything we want to say about like subsidies and grants and things that should incent people, like if you park that for the moment and you just think about what is better for heating a home, like we're talking about a transition that's like the coal gas transition, that is underway but in its really early stages. And I think we've gotten trapped in a lot of noise and a lot of bipolarization. Again, my motherland is America. I'm no stranger to that.
yeah, absolutely.
And I am pleased to see that it's a bit less extreme here, but it's possible to separate ourselves from that polarity and get into a discussion that's just like, look at two technologies side by side, and on every single thing I just said, the potential to reduce our bills, to keep our energy British, to create jobs, to allow you to have more comfort in your home, more safety, better breathe air that you're breathing. On all those dimensions, heat
Mm.
pumps win. And so we've articulated that case kind of in that order.
Okay, yeah, amazing. And so I guess there's a reason, or maybe there's a bunch of reasons why we've not got there already in terms of the energy transition. Why I think we're probably only installing something like 60,000 heat pumps a year at the moment. Why we're probably still on less than 500,000 in total across the UK. Um, is there anything that you think would help us overcome those barriers, or can we articulate those barriers, and what could we do to get over them? What do you think?
Definitely. I mean, the single biggest one is running costs.
Okay.
So, I mean, you've done a great job on this channel of overcoming the misinformation that, it has to be more expensive to run a
Yeah,
heat
yeah,
pump. but it could be a lot less expensive if we
Mm.
did something fairly straightforward with our energy bills. And that is that we load up billions of pounds every year onto electricity bills as a well-intentioned kind of hangover of decarbonizing the generation grid, of trying to get
Yeah, yeah,
coal off.
yeah.
But that still hampers electricity, even now that that's less of an issue. And it means that we're almost implicitly subsidizing gas,
Okay.
because on a sort of side-by-side basis, your gas bill is less. And the good news is that as a policy, there are some pretty easy ways to create a mechanism where we switch those policy costs across to gas, and we still protect people, so that it's a fair transition across. And I can go into more. It gets very nerdy very quickly there, but making that switch could put up red flags if you just went, okay, tomorrow we're going to hit, play on moving policy costs from electricity to gas, and then you don't want to leave people out in the cold, obviously, but a whole bunch of kind of policy think tanks and such, and people looking out for the most vulnerable, say again, really unambiguously, that we could make this change in policy with a few protections for the most vulnerable, and that it would actually benefit the people who need it the most. So that's the rebalancing energy costs and moving those levies across from electricity to gas would be my number one. Like if I had a magic wand and could wave it tomorrow, that I'd overcome. We're basically just getting in our own way with
Yeah,
policy.
yeah. And so just to stick to that point at the moment, I guess it's those costs which, like you said, to decarbonize the electricity grid, whether it's feed-in tariff, renewables obligation, contracts for difference, etc. Maybe some of those need to stay linked to electricity, but some of it, if it was put onto to a gas bill, that would reduce that what we call the spark gap. So the ratio between electricity and gas that would help people say if moving to a heat pump, moving to electrified heating would be cheaper or much cheaper than heating with gas. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And international comparators show
Okay.
that
Right. Okay.
that's what happened. Like you can kind of plot on and Nesta have done this. They're one of the charities looking after the vulnerable that I mentioned, and trying to bring facts to this debate.
Mm.
Hugely plug their research, and they've literally looked at like the map of kind of heat pump adoption versus the spark gap, as you say. And it's a pretty clear relationship that in countries like the UK, where the spark gap is massive, you have kind of correspondingly very low heat pump adoption. But when countries kind of get out of their own way and let electricity be the more cost efficient fuel that it is, then heat pump adoption goes through the roof.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Amazing. And so what else? So is it as simple as that? If we change policy costs, if we made electricity cheaper or made gas more expensive, do we think that would just accelerate heat pump adoption? Do you think things would change overnight, or what else is in the way, or what could slow us down?
I think that'd be huge. I think that's almost the necessary precondition. And I think there's plenty of other things, and it gets a bit chicken and egg with some of the other issues, right? But for instance, because there is this kind of perceived debate still around like what is the future of heating in the UK and how does it differ by household and such, it's really hard to get the things installed. So you get a variety of answers from your kind of local man and van. Your own local authority doesn't necessarily know where to fit the kind of more reinforced electricity wires versus there's going to be a new hydrogen gas grid coming. All of these things cascade. So I just say like the next barrier to overcome is making those installations easier, and doing that through the sort of individual installers and kind of at the individual level, micro level, but then at the macro level, there's implications obviously on planning and on things that are much bigger than, are at the kind of community and larger level. The next one is probably the heat pump proposition itself. So there are some, pain points to overcome. Now you've already, again, myth busted. Like I think there's a lot of perceived pain points that actually aren't. So heat pumps are actually, quiet as a library. And they work in the cold and all these things. So we don't need to worry about overcoming that with technology. Like that's a misconception that just needs communicating actually. It's not about a new proposition. But the one I'll call out here is financing.
Mm.
So I think the reason that the first barrier I mentioned on running cost is so important to overcome is that they do cost, like heat pumps cost more upfront than boilers do. And so you at least want to make sure that you're paying that back, and you want to accelerate that payback
Hmm.
in order to get it
Absolutely.
into more homes. But if there were better models for people to pay over time, for that to be linked to their mortgages at similar rates, for people in flats to be able to share ownership. When I say heat pumps, I don't necessarily, you might envision like an aircon looking unit
Mm.
that's fit for a home, but ground source heat pumps are actually the more kind of efficient technology for communities and for really
Yeah.
densely populated areas. So there's a number of things around the proposition that can be improved. And again, it needs to kind of be led by demand. That's part of what's holding it back.
Mm.
And then my fourth and final barrier, that was rebalancing prices, making installs easy, customer centric propositions. And the fourth one is skilled jobs growth. And
Okay.
so, it's related to making installs easy, but there's a real kind of economic growth piece to this that is, there are jobs to be had because a heat pump is a more labor intensive installation. It's more complex. You can't just, wake up one morning as a plumber or as a boiler installer and do this the next day.
Mhm.
You do need to learn. And so, some sort of programmatic approach that really engages people who are already in the trades or people who might consider joining up, to be incentivized to go and become more skilled and help be part of this transformation that's really going to make families warmer and healthier.
Yeah.
Um, it is the fourth and final pillar I'd lay out.
Yeah. Amazing. So those four: rebalancing costs, making installations easier. Is that what the
Mm-hmm.
second one?
That's the one.
I've lost it already.
Developing
Uh,
centric heat pump propositions.
Customer centric heat pumps, great. Okay, amazing. And then the skills base to be able to do that. And I guess I think most people who go through a heat pump installation, they experience all this. They experience the disruption in their home if they've got to replace some radiators or find space for a new tank, or make space outside, take away some garden furniture to make space outside. And so I think that point about making it is as easy as possible for a customer, making it as attractive as possible for a customer is really key. Um, and yeah, a friend of ours just went through a heat pump installation, and they're really pleased that they've done it, and
Mm.
they're really happy they've done it, and they've there's been a couple of bits where they've had to have a radiator put in, which means they had to take down the dartboard. And that's the thing that's lasted in their head. And it's like, actually, how do we make these installations like properly human centric? This is something I do every day. I play darts in this place, but my installer's just taken it down to put a big radiator in. It's kind of like, okay, we could have thought this through a bit better. So there's some things that we need to learn, I think, so that we're not rushing these things, so that we're doing it with the homeowner, so we're doing things really, really carefully and nicely with each person.
Yes.
Um, we were chatting just before we started recording this a bit about some of the rumors about the budget, and I think it's really interesting that we that we might have read some rumors about what might be changed in the budget already. It's as if they've pushed things out to see what the reaction is, to kind of test the water to begin with. And the things that I think are relevant to this conversation are, it seems that they want to make energy cheaper, and that may well be that they want to make electricity cheaper. So it might be that policy costs move away from electricity. It may also be that VAT comes off electricity and gas. So it might be, which could be a good thing in terms of what you're talking about. It could be that we are seeing a slight reduction in the ratio between gas and electricity, but not quite putting all of the policy costs onto gas. So that's an interesting thing to come. And then the other rumor is that they might means test the boiler upgrade scheme grant, which kind of would be a disaster for this. And again, it's a rumor, and I wonder, we'll see when the budget in maybe 10 days time is announced, but
So
that £7,500 grant to a heat pump installation is really significant, and I think is both growing the skills base. It's getting more installers to come and say, "Oh, there's some money to be made here," but it's also making it attractive for homeowners to say, "Oh, well, that seems like a really good offer, really good deal for me to get that grant."
Yes.
So it may be that in the next 2 weeks we see loads of helpful things from a policy perspective, which help this installation, and it also we may see some increased barriers and increased challenges of which I really worry will, a bit like when the feed-in tariff for solar disappeared kind of overnight. It feels like this could be a really big risk for low carbon heating.
I'm both worried and kind of delaying worry until I just see what's actually in it. Because as you say, it feels like a bunch of things are out in the ether, but what's actually coming, we can only speculate. The one thing I will say is, like, it brings me back to the original argument, which is climate aside, on a cost basis, on a thermodynamic, just like technology basis, heat pumps and electricity win. And so whilst um, the boiler upgrade scheme is amazing, like it's quite good compared to what a lot of other countries have done, and something that I would really hate to see go, because I think, as you say, the heat pump fleet is really small in the UK to begin with, so we kind of need everything we can get. Over the long run, it isn't sustainable, right? Like it was never going to be the thing that got us through mass market adoption, and it's really the fundamentals and the competitiveness of the technology. And I'll get off my soapbox because I've said it so many times at this point, but like that's what I find really compelling about electrification of heat, is just that you can strip away the subsidy today in 2025 and you will still win if you can get out of your own way.
Yeah. And I think, if we redesigned this whole system from scratch, if we didn't have a gas grid in the first place, and if we had heat pumps connected to an electricity supply, we wouldn't have the dual bits of infrastructure to maintain, the costs associated with that.
Yes.
We'd have this incredible technology, 300, 400% efficient, which is taking free heat from the air to keep homes warm. I think in the open letter, there's a phrase which is that every home's got a heat pump in their kitchen, and the fridge and the freezer, hey, is heat pump already, but utilizing that again for increased comfort. And then, the reduction in cost, if we weren't punishing the use of electricity and subsidizing the use of gas, this just makes sense on its own. And I think it would be great to see that holistically as the public benefit, the public good, the personal benefit, the comfort in a home, the energy security of just using much less energy to heat a home because of efficiency. All this makes sense eventually. So say that again.
It should be a no-brainer.
Yeah.
You should.
Yeah.
And
I get the disruption. I get the barriers. I think for new homes, really frustratingly, and maybe we'll get onto this next as a side point, but a friend of mine is living in this 1,500 home development in the east of County Durham, where 750 of those homes are on a district heat network, and the other 750 are on gas boilers. This estate was built in the last 18 months, and it's just so disappointing that a district heat network wasn't trusted. This would be a mine water heat pump powering, providing the heat for the heat network. And it's kind of like, oh gosh, we're in 2025 and we're still building some buildings with gas boilers, and we've got to have the policy which stops that. But we'll also, what a waste that has been to put the infrastructure in the ground for an electricity supply and a gas supply to half those homes.
yes.
But I understand you live in a house or a flat in a heat network, and that's not easy.
As well. Yeah, that's right. I mean, I live in central London, where like it does make sense, to my point earlier, to like densely populated areas. Like I should not have my own heat pump. I should be on district heating with a ground source heat pump. Now the reality is, I'm in a leasehold and I'm in a district heating with a biogas CHP, so gas plant basically.
Yeah.
And I'll be banging on that door every year as I do to get them to change that. But that plant was built in like 2018,
Mm.
and so it does kind of have to depreciate before they'll
Mm.
actually probably look to a new technology. Now, it does mean that I can speak from lived experience that I've got underfloor heating, and so I do like that. I feel like very relatable on this topic, and that learning to live with like a low temperature heating system, no
Mm.
radiators, pros and cons if you're used to that.
Yeah.
But in the main, just a very steady and comfortable level of heat. And by the way, because it's a fairly new home, like very well insulated. So in that regard, like I can resonate really well with the feeling of having a heat pump, but I've grappled with this on a personal level for some time, as you might imagine. Like,
Yeah.
should I just go get myself a heat pump? And like the
Yeah.
answer is probably no. Like, it's actually from a resource macro efficiency perspective, probably no. I should just continue to bother the local utility.
Yeah, yeah. But I love it. The kind of like the personal campaign to help support this national effort, but actually locally, it's kind of like, you know what? It's not for me. This is for other people. I think it's brilliant. It's great to hear. Okay, so tell me a bit more about the group behind this work, and then I guess moving beyond. But you mentioned Colin McGill and Jade Davidson, who are both kind of superstars, and it was a pleasure for me to meet people like that when I came to Moving Beyond Teesside, and the broader community of really amazing professionals and activists and thinkers. And so what should we say about Moving Beyond? I don't know, but what's your experience been of this this group of people and these events over the years?
So I feel really passionately about Moving Beyond as an organization. They're a not-for-profit and a sort of convening entity. So running events in the main, like there's an annual flagship event that both of us have attended at least a couple of times,
Yeah.
And really their purpose is to help accelerate a just transition, and so that means both on the social and environmental lens, helping to overcome the barriers in the system and in politics, and bring people across value chains together to affect change. And so, my one that I picked, with Colin and Jane and others, and Colin, by the way, comes from a career in energy, and Jane from a career in Welsh government, she's a wonderful author as well. They are just two examples of people who come from different sort of professional backgrounds, different personal networks, and who've brought that to bear. And together we've used that variety and diversity in our training, diversity in who we can get input from as we did this research, and then ultimately as we crafted the open letter and distributed it, the ability to reach as wide an audience as we can do through our individual networks, and then through the sort of degrees of separation that come with the modern era, posting things on LinkedIn, etc.
Yeah. Well, and it's a great community. So yeah, I've been to two of the events, the one in Teesside and the one last month in London. And that intersection, the just transition piece is so important. It's the intersection between local community who often wouldn't care about what the climate story is going on, but who are impacted by emissions in the local community, alongside these thought leaders or corporate types or whatever it would be who are trying to drive the transition from the top. And the event that we were at last month in Silvertown, under the flight path of London City Airport, in a community that's been really left behind. One of the visits that we did was at a school where it felt like these kids with really some of the worst air quality in the country, at risk of flooding at this school on a floodplain, and again in the flight path of an airport. It was a really amazing and like powerful moment, I guess, that to see the climate crisis in one moment and see what the just transition needs to be. And I think the story with heat pumps is we can make homes warmer, energy cheaper. We can use less energy. It can be British energy. I saw a guy on LinkedIn talking about heat pumps and comparing them to gas and how we import gas, but we just take the heat from the air nearby and use local electricity to power to heat our homes. And it was like local heat for local people. It's that kind of campaign that's Anyway,
The way
tangent.
we say it in the open letter is the biggest winners will be the least well off.
Okay.
It is the most kind of fuel impoverished folk that are still on direct electric, which is the most expensive way to heat your home,
Yeah, yeah,
basically, because you're
yeah.
getting hit with those levies, but then you don't have the heat exchanger to
Absolutely.
get the
Yeah,
4x kind of multiple on your
yeah,
energy. Um, and so I think that there is a just profoundly human piece to the, like, yeah, to your point, being immersed in community in the moving beyond events is so helpful, especially when you live in kind of a corporate strategy bubble a little bit, and you can think about these things a bit too intellectually and a bit
mm,
too kind of removed from the families that it impacts. But what gives me just so much hope is that in an economically rational and human regard, like we lay out what I think, and I'm biased, is a really compelling case for a transition that is well within our gift. Like, it does
yeah.
not require tons more R&D
Mhm.
or massive subsidy. Like, it is right there if we only grasp it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And so, yeah, talking about corporate stuff, and you've mentioned it at the start, what you're doing these days. And if you look closely, I'm pretty sure I can see an octopus behind you
Yeah,
there. But
he is.
you've done this work, I think, before you joined Octopus EVs, and uh, so this is a moving beyond connection thing. Um, but the wider story, Octopus is so important to this wider story, and I've talked really positively on this channel about actually the disruption and what Octopus have facilitated across the board. But yeah, tell us what you're doing for your day job. Then you work for Octopus, but you're not doing heat pump stuff. You're doing some other stuff.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, there's only one Ann Siml. So Ann Siml is who, wrote this open letter with a team and published it before I joined Octopus. But it is that same ethos, like that same just passion for bringing clean, green energy to families as affordably as we can that got me so excited about us.
Yeah, yeah,
And so I was lucky enough to know the founder of Octopus Electric Vehicles for the last few years, Fiona
okay,
Howarth. And so when I looked above the parapet and went, it's been a great run, 11 odd years in strategy consulting, and I'm ready to roll up my sleeves and get into a business that is affecting energy transition. She did it. Honestly, I have to pinch myself, like the kindest, kind of most phenomenal job putting me forwards for this strategy role. I'm head of special projects for the EV business. And you might be surprised to, like, not everybody realizes that Octopus aren't just, an energy retailer, but we are a lease co for electric vehicles. So if you want to get your electric vehicle, check us out. Look up Octopus Electric Vehicles online. We offer two propositions. So one to our sort of everyday consumer, and another on what's called salary sacrifice, which comes out of your pre-tax income if you're a salaried employee someplace that joins the scheme. And I just love, as I said, the mission to bring affordable, clean transition technology into the world, into the mass market. Not even necessarily because it's the green champions that want it. Whilst those are amazing, we are amazing.
mm,
I'm one of
sure,
them.
yeah, yeah,
That's not how we're going to get to net zero. Like, how we're going to get to net zero is through everyday people who just see like a better car that doesn't emit noxious fumes on the school run and is cheaper now to fuel up by a factor of 10.
yeah,
So I'm part of building that growth and doing some cool, like, innovative stuff in the strategy team.
yeah. That's amazing. And also they're so much more fun to drive. I just love it every time I get
Right?
in my like really average Nissan Leaf, 5 year old Nissan Leaf, and it just off from the traffic lights. I'm just like flying away silently. I love it. So amazing. Well, and that's amazing. So yes, heat pump stuff. This is how we might make heat pumps more attractive if we change these things. If we get the customer experience right. If we train the installer base, all this kind of stuff. And electric vehicles, two of the big challenges that we have of heat and transport. What's next? What's next for Ann Siml? Hey,
Oh, isn't
you've
that
done these
enough
two.
to get on with?
I'm joking. I'm joking.
Well,
No,
I
I'm
mean,
joking.
I'll keep trying to fight the good fight,
Yeah, yeah,
and mostly for just people who know they've got to pay the bills and want to save up for a holiday, and we just want to do normal things and not have it break the bank. So
Well, thank you so much, Anne, for your time and for the work you've put in on this, the heat pump research and the heat pump open letter with the team at Moving Beyond. And thank you for all you do with Octopus EV.
Thank you, Tom, for having me and for getting the good word out there. And I hope that folks read the open letter if they have a minute and feel inspired.
Perfect. Okay, that's it. I thought that was great to chat to Anne about the work that her and the crew from Moving Beyond have been doing. I hope you enjoyed that conversation. I hope you found it interesting. The key takeaways from me is that we could help accelerate heat pump adoption if we simply reduce costs for electricity, that we work to make heat pump installs easier by potentially relaxing some planning rules, that we work to make heat pump installs more attractive to households, giving households what they want rather than sometimes what an installer might want, and that we can grow the industry and in doing so create clean jobs. I think the message from Anne is that if energy is priced fairly, heat pumps win the argument without much government intervention. There's a lot more detail in the open letter about what rebalancing costs on bills might do. And actually some of this we think might happen in the budget coming later this month. So we shall see. But please do have a look at the open letter, the detail in that. Have a look at Moving Beyond and have a look at the kind of work that Anne's doing at Octopus EV too. I am hoping to do similar longer conversations with people in the future. I did one about solar with Birchie or Andrew Birch from Open Solar. And if this kind of conversation interests you, please do hit subscribe to the channel. And why not comment below for people you think I should talk to in the future.